All right, CNT125, IP version 6 lab. In the first podcast, we took a look at our maps and we knew what we were configuring. And then we connected into both routers, did the host name, and we configured both interfaces. So we're started. What we're going to do now in the next section is let's put the routing protocol on. So I've cabled back into my 2011 router, and I'm going to do the routing protocol on this one first. Now, first thing we need to do is we need to enable unicast routing. So we need to say, hey, we want to be able to pass unicast traffic in our network. Unicast routing. That has been configured. We now need to enable our OSPF protocol. So we're now going to say IP version 6, router, OSPF 2. We're saying, okay, IP version 6, we would do router OSPF previously, so we're now saying IP version 6 router. OSPF is our protocol, and 2 is our process ID. So we're basically turning on OSPF. We now need to identify, as you see here, it's looking for a router ID. We now need to give this a router ID. Each of the routers in OSPF, we need to give them identifier, and it actually uses an IP version 4 identifier. So we're going to say router IP address, and we're going to make this one, or router ID, excuse me. Router ID, we're going to make this in 1111, and when we do the other router, we'll do 2222. That way it can be identified. We're exiting. So we've enabled unicast routing, we've enabled OSPF protocol, but we now need to make sure OSPF is communicating on each of our interfaces. So we're now going to go to each interface. So interface, these are fast Ethernet 0/0. And we are going to say IP version 6, OSPF 2, because that's our process ID. This belongs to area 0. And we'll do exit. And we're now going to do this for the other interface as well. Fast Ethernet 01, IP version 6, OSPF 2, area 0. And exit. So now it's communicating OSPF on each of the interfaces. So I'm going to do exit, I'm going to do a show run, and I'm going to look for a couple things. There's my name. Coming down through, here's the unicast routing. I'm going to keep going. Here should be my interfaces. There we are, no IP address because we're not using IP4. Here's my IP version 6. IP version 6 enabled, and here's the OSPF enabled on that interface. And I should see pretty much the same layout on this guy as well. If I come down a little further, I should see my OSPF enabled down here as well. IP version 6 router OSPF. So I'm going to, in this guy, I'm going to do a copy run start. And I'm going to move my console cable to my 4221. Okay, so there's my 4221. And I'm going to do the exact same process over here. We're going to say config T on this one, IP version 6, unicast routing. I'm using tab key to complete my commands. That makes things go a little bit quicker. IP version 6, router OSPF 2. It's saying, hey, I need the router ID. So we need the router ID now, router ID. This time we're going to do 2222. So this is unique identifier for this router. We now need to enable it on our interfaces. So we need interface. These are gigabit 0/0/0. We need IP version 6, OSPF 2, area 0. Exit. I'm going to do my other interface. Exit. Again, I'm using up arrow to bring last commands back. Tab key to complete my commands. I'm using my shortcuts now. Okay. I'm actually getting a message that is starting to load some stuff in OSPF table. That's what I'm getting, some loading of stuff into the OSPF. But I'm going to do a show run here. Actually, let me do this. Do show run. And I'm looking. There's my name. I'm going to keep going. Here's my unicast routing. I'm going to keep going. Here is my 2 interface configs, and these should look very much like the other router. No IP address. There's our IP version 6, IP version 6 enable, IP version 6 OSPF 2 area 0. If I keep going down here, I will also see the router OSPF 2 down here as well. All right, so I will do a copy, run start on this guy as well. And that should be saved. Okay, so we now have the interfaces configured. We now have the routing protocol configured. So we should have the basics in place for this network to be up and running. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little bit of like checking and verifying. I'm going to double check that my link lights are on, and I'm doing that. If necessary, I trace my cables through and make sure they are correct. The next thing I do is make sure I do the show run, which I did on each of these. And I was looking for, under the interfaces, I was looking for any shutdown notifications. And I didn't see any here. I didn't see any here. So that's the kind of stuff I'm checking. I'm also looking at my OSPF. I'm making sure that I have OSPF under each interface here, under here, and then down further I want to make sure I have OSPF here as well. So I'm checking that on both routers. I checked it on the other one, and I checked it on this one. What I will do now, I think things are up and running. We're going to look at our routing table and see, are our networks, are they propagating? Do we have all the networks in our routing table? So I'm going to move my console cable back to the first router. Okay, I'll move back to the 2011. There you are, console cable. And again, I would do a show run right now if I have not done that previously. And again, I'm going to look at my interfaces and make sure I don't see a shutdown or anything like that under here. That's what I'm looking for. And then I'm also looking to make sure I have OSPF on here, which I do. Good. So I'm now going to look at my routing table. So if I do a show IP route, that's what I'm used to. When I do that, I go, oh no, there's no networks in my routing table. What happened? Mr. Brown's putting his hands on each side of his face right now like, oh no, what happened? There is no IP version 4 routes in my routing table because we're not using IP version 4. This is an IP version 4 command. So I just asked it for, hey, what IP version 4 routes do you have in your IP version 4 routing table? And right now it's got nothing. So we actually need to use the command show IP version 6 route. Show IP version 6 route will show the IP version 6 routes in my IP version 6 routing table. So I should now be looking for the A, B, and C networks. I should be seeing the A, B, and C networks. So A, B, and C. Whoop, whoop. So I actually do see A, B, and C networks in my routing table. That's a good sign. That's a good sign. If I did not, I would go back and do these steps I did previously. Check my cables, do the show run, look for the shutdowns, verify my IP addresses, verify that OSPF is under each interface, also verify that OSPF is in there and configured. Those are the things I'm checking. All right, so since I do actually have a routing table, what I will do is I will copy this guy, and yeah, that's right, that'll work. I'm gonna do a Control-C here. I'm gonna open up my notepad, and I'm gonna paste that in. So I will do a right-click paste, and I will call this my IP version 6 routing table. I have a little IP version 6 folder I put it into. So I'm gonna call this my IP version 6 routing table.txt is fine. So I have my IP version 6 routing table, and I do want to make sure I have A, B, and C networks in there as well. And if I'm going to close my text file, I have that. But if I look a little closer now, A says it's attached, fast Ethernet 00. B says it's attached. Right here, here's B. B is attached to fast Ethernet 01. And C, I'm going to get to out of this interface over here. I will get to that network out of that interface. So my routing table has all of my networks in. Woo! All right, what I need to do now is move on to my workstation IP version 6 configuration. I will do that in the next podcast.